So good morning, everyone. I wish you all a very good morning, and I'm very, very happy to see you. We are here at session 5A, Improved Access for All, and I'm looking forward to this morning. We have some very interesting presentations to share with you. My name is Vries. I am the co-founder of Bikes, a social enterprise driven by the belief that cycling is the simplest solution to the world's most complex problems. And we work with the province of Gelderland on travel equality and improving access, mainly because our aim is to get more children on bikes, because we really believe that if you do that, if you make cities safer for older people and kids, you will make it safer and better for everyone. So basically, I'm very much looking forward to this morning and also to the discussion with everyone. So I really want to make this an interactive session, and I think that is a good thing to do. And of course, we will not only talk about the freedom of cycling, because I realize that's it's not like that for everyone. And I would like to get up a poll first, because I'm really curious about which organization you come from. So maybe you want to start with the housekeeping rules. Maybe we do that. We do that first, because then if you talk about that, then we don't need to talk about that anymore. If you have any questions, please go to the chat box. It's on upper right hand side of the box. You see it, and then go to chats and then session, and then you can share your questions or your ideas or your examples in the chat, so I could go there and invite one of the speakers to answer the question. And if you want to view the poll, I was just referring, I want to ask you some questions in the poll, and then you could go to polls. It's in the middle of the box, and then you could go to session. And if you want to view who is attending the session, go to people. So then again, also to the session. And if you want to maximize the screen, you can hide the chat by pushing the arrow. And after the session, it would be nice if you could try the networking function, because I know that it's not like it would be in real life, but I think we have done a great job, to sort of see how we might pretend like it's like we have a stage right now, and we can come in and go, and we can meet other people and have a discussion. So I really want to invite you to do so and have a good session with us. Maybe we could go to the next slide, Pascal, or because I want to introduce the speakers today. We have Colm Ennis from Dublin City Council. He will be talking about the languages, and Andrea Lorenzini, he will be talking about rural areas and how the project he did. Vincent Meijers of the Gemeente Nijmegen, Ricardo Poppeliers of Ecorys, and Maria Rodrigues from Panteia. And as I said, my name is Vries, and I'm here on behalf of the province of Gelderland. So Pascal, maybe we could go to the first poll. And if you go to the polls box, you can see it. And Pascal, he will be helping me put up the poll, because I really want to know a bit about the background of everyone. So maybe you could view that. Do you think urban mobility will become more or less sustainable in the coming years? Please answer. No, it's an old one, I think, but we can do it. So that is happy votes. I see 36 votes already for more sustainable, and no one thinks it's going to be less sustainable. What a great world we will live in after COVID. That's amazing. I'm really optimistic about that. We have 38 votes already for more sustainable. $39. If you think about that, and the world I come from, where in India you could see the Himalaya again, and people are really thinking about how they could change. You see in Europe all the amazing bike paths in Rome, in Milan, in Paris, Madrid, London, all the positive things happening. And it's not only in the cities, it's also in the rural areas, where, of course, people are thinking how to make a sustainable restart. 43 votes already. And maybe we could go to the second one. I was only for... Yeah, we could go to the second poll now. Maybe you could tell us who you are, because I'm really interested to know what kind of organization you work for. I'm sorry, I'm going to take a sip of water, and in the meantime, you could tell us where you come from and what your background is. I do it myself as well. So we see a lot of people from local, regional authorities. I see some NGOs. Consultancy. University. We have a nice mixed group today. That's really good. Yeah. I like to see that, and I like to hear from you later on. And also, if you could share your different versions of that, that would be really good. Yeah, so I think, yeah, it's a good mix of people coming from different worlds. And I think that is a good start for us for today. I also have another question for you, and maybe Pasquale, you could put that up as well. And please start using the chat as well and tell us who you are. It would be good to see all of you. I see some people. Good morning, Timea. I see some speakers, Vincent, Andrea, Ricardo. It's good to see you. Good morning, everyone who joined. Yes, I have another question for you, because, you know, I have, of course, experienced travel inequality, and found that it wasn't very accessible it wasn't very accessible. I wasn't able to travel, and maybe you could tell me in what situation you were. So this is my last poll, my last question to you, because I want to get a glimpse of, you know, what was happening and in what situation were you? Because I think we all have examples of this happening to us. Yeah. It's also a good mix, but I see rural areas as one of the biggest things, and disabilities. When I was traveling with my child, for example, you then find, or with someone in a wheelchair, you then find that it's really, really different to travel. So it's good to hear more from today's speakers about this. So I've seen a few very interesting decks with great examples and projects from over Europe. And I want to ask to come to the stage Andrea Lorenzini from MemEx, the SMARTA Project. And he will be talking about challenges, opportunities, and solutions to improve mobility in rural areas. Please, Andrea, come to the stage.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maud, can you hear me well?
I can hear you very well.
Great.
Good presentation. I will leave the stage.
Yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. And I'm Andrea Lorenzini, transport consultant at MemEx, Italy. We are based in Livorno. We offer our services to public authorities, transport and mobility operators in the aspect of urban and rural areas, ICT, and sustainable mobility. So I'm going to share my screen so that I can start my presentation. Can anyone say to me whether you see my screen? Maud, can you see my screen? Hello, can anyone?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can see your screen, Andrea. I wrote in the chat. But we cannot hear you now. We cannot hear you, Andrea, now. So maybe yeah, we cannot hear you, unfortunately. So maybe
Now can you hear me?
Now, yes. Okay.
I try again. Sorry to share the screen. Can you hear and see my screen?
Yes, please put in presentation mode.
Yeah.
And then it's fine. Perfect. Go on.
Okay, thank you very much, Pasquale. Sorry for this. Okay, so let's start with this. This is a presentation of the SMARTA project, and I'm trying to show you what we tried to do over the last 2.5 years with our project. So good to see that in the poll about when we discussed about inequality, more or less there was 0.5% of people who say that rural areas was the one that faces that. So it's important to start with the context and to understand that Europe is much rural than it appears. That about 80% of the Europe territory that can be classified as rural areas, and about 1/4 of EU population lives in rural areas where there is a higher need for mobility due to the dispersed services, longer distance to travel, and so forth. And so we can try to analyze 3 main issues. The first is about mobility. So what SMARTA tried to discuss the topic, how to live daily life without a car. The second is about the traffic generated into rural areas, about the cars that convey to urban centers. And the third one is the environment and pollution. So the SMARTA project is an initiative funded through, sponsored by the European Parliament and funded through DG Move that aim to enhance the current policies and practices on mobility in rural areas. And by exploring ways to improve shared mobility interconnected with the public transport. It started in May 2018, and MemEx is the coordinator of the SMARTA consortium that is made of 5 different partners. And our project has 3 main, or the project activities can be clustered into 3 main tasks. The first was the research part with the analysis of the insight paper and the good practices. The second one was the demonstration with the engagement and the collaboration of pilot sites. And the third one was the stakeholder engagement. And what was the final aim of our project is to produce a policy recommendation for rural mobility and for improving accessibility into rural areas, targeting different stakeholders. We got the Commission as first and the Parliament, but also practitioner, operators, and regional and local authorities. So it's important to understand what is the rural shared mobility landscape. Public transport by bus is not the only way to offer transportation services. There are different services that we try to map into this that we call the SMARTA Atomium, where we basically have 3 main cluster of services: the flexible transport services, including flexible demand responsive transport and door-to-door DRT, the ride-sharing services such as carpooling, shared taxi, hitchhiking, and so forth, and also the e-bike sharing and car sharing as asset sharing scheme. So the fixed route by bus and rail are the core of the offer, but there are also other shared mobility services that can be implemented. And also, this was possible thanks to an investigation on this was possible, so thanks to the collaboration with these 14 different sites covering 13 different countries as shown in this map. And we also had this internal classification in SMARTA, SMARTA 2, and 5 in-depth good practices. But what we tried to do was to have a good balance across European territory to see what were the different transport services that could be implemented. I want to give you just a few thoughts about the research activities that we made. We basically do two things. One was the analysis of insight papers, so the framework within which rural shared mobility is implemented in rural areas across Europe. And the second one was the overview of good practices in rural shared mobility. And what was emerged quite strongly is that although there are different frameworks, regulatory, financing, policy framework for rural mobility, and despite there are different authority level acting in rural mobility, and despite there are some regional local authorities that try to make policy and program on rural mobility, it emerged that there is a near total absence of specific national policy for mobility in rural areas, but not only national, but also at the European level. So there are few obligations set at national level to provide rural mobility services or specific funding for rural mobility. And that was one of the key outcomes of the research part. The second part was the good practices. So we identified around 32 good practices in rural shared mobility, where we internally classify in demand responsive shared mobility, rail and bus, integrated public transport network, rural mobility programs, and what we call hybrid cases. And I don't have time to enter into detail, but just to say that there is a specific report available on the SMARTA website that you can consult, where you can find also this. Second part was the collaboration with pilot sites, and we basically tried to address these three main themes. The first one, what are the solutions to cope with rural mobility challenges? The second is, what are the impact of implementing such solution? And the third one is, what can policymakers do to improve rural mobility? And we also developed a specific evaluation framework that could seem quite complex, but it was made of 4 main layers. The first one was the enabling factor. The second one was mobility and accessibility indicators. The third one, the implementation process of how the solution could be implemented. And the fourth one was the feasibility and the transferability condition. And in and all, we applied this evaluation framework to all the 14 different sites to gain findings from them, to analyze what were the outcomes, and also to include this in our policy recommendation. The third one was the engagement and networking, and that was one of the most important part for this, because we tried to build a sort of SMARTA network where we try to validate our results through the network. Here's a picture of our workshop. There is the final conference that I will talk to you in a while. And we also try to engage with different stakeholders such as Euromontana, the Mamba Interact Project, the European Rural Parliament, and the European Network for Rural Development, just to cite some examples. And I'm going to conclude, because time is challenging, with these three main slides. The first one is, what is the problem of rural mobility in Europe? We think that there is a lack of policy and responsibility, and there are few obligations for that. And this leads to limited supply of services. There is a limited public transport, low frequency of services, time commuting, and unsuitable for many purposes. And there is also a lack of integration of different shared mobility services with public transport. And this resulted in turn in limited mobility for people without a car. There is almost total dependency on the car, and people without a car are dependent on others. There is limited accessibility to bus services when they exist, about distance, surface, lighting, PT stop, and so forth. And what we can say about that? So why should Europe act on something that seems to be a local issue? So first of all, we have to identify that mobility has a major impact on all the different European policy. And second is that clearly these issues are common across all European countries. But if we think that mobility is a basic freedom and that it means the possibility to access work, education, services, and we see mobility as an enabler of any rural community, and to also reach the different business activities, to meet people together, the rural community and so forth. But rural areas have been faced strong austerity measure over the last 10 years, more or less. That is the centralization of services, reduction of financial support, and also social demographic issues, where there are people that are migrating from rural to urban areas, and there are also aging population. So this leads to mobility issues because you need to travel further for other purpose, and you just have the car. And this increase also, as I said to you, these three main impacts. But coming back, what is the problem? Because there are a quarter of your population that lives in rural areas, and a quarter of this population is at risk of poverty and social exclusion. So if you think about the investment that have been made on urban mobility, and we talk about the investment that have been made to rural, these are not the same. So I'm just concluding what we need to do. The first thing that SMARTA is trying to highlight is you have time to rethink rural mobility. So we have to think that there is this assumption that everyone in rural areas has a car, 2 cars, or 3 cars, but it's not the case, because there are people that cannot drive for other reasons. There are people that don't want to drive for sustainability or because of other reasons. And also time to ask, so there is the need of new vision for mobility in rural areas. And what we are trying to now send to the Commission is that rural territories require policy framework that improve mobility in your region. There is need an action at the European policy-making level to develop a framework that, from one side, take into account the specificity of rural areas and their population, but from the other, enable rural shared mobility to be implemented. Because we have to bear in mind that the rural shared mobility solution, as showed to you before in the Atomium, require minimal infrastructure. These are not metro, tram, or things like that. And so that can also be deployed rapidly. So I wrap up because time is done. Just inviting you to our SMARTA final conference on the 10th and 11th of December. If you want to learn more about the SMARTA project, please join us at that. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
Yes, Andrea, thank you so much for your presentation. And I already quickly saw a question arise from Robert Stussy. Robert, you say we should not always say rural areas because many challenges are rural, and as low density or better low demand situation of metropolitan areas, and especially weekend and night demand, which can be in urban areas also. Andrea, maybe could you answer this question?
Yeah. Thanks, Robert, for your point. And yeah, my answer will be that one other term that we can also use is what, in terms of vulnerable user, and this was also a discussion we had in the inclusion project, is that these are rural people are what we call poorly served user. If we think about the mobility option that all urban people have, they have plenty of options. There is the car, the bike, the tram, the bus, and so forth. And what about rural? If the rural territories, maybe we cannot say rural areas, territories, or low density area, mountainous areas, or these are poorly served in the sense that there are just 2 buses per day, more or less. Although there are these good practices that I showed to you, and that's why we need to act on this, because otherwise there will be a continuous of the rural decline, the cycle of decline, with less people, less services, less financing support, and so forth. Yeah. But yeah, I fully agree that probably we need to expand the term of rural areas into a rural, low demand situation, remote, deprived areas, and things like that.
Great, and Erik is asking if he says, is the described problem a chicken and egg situation? So no supply, no policy, investment, no demand. What do you think, Andrea?
Actually, yes, probably that's right. I mean, I will just invert in terms of policy and supply and investment, because we think that the policy is the driving force of mobility. If we think about, as I said to you, urban, zero emission zone, reduce the pollution, and so forth. These are the policy driving good outcome of the policy sector into urban. And if we think about rural, there is no policy at all. So this leads to few investment, and you provide the transport with the few money that you have for 1 or 2 buses per day. And this means to less supply or few supply or low provision of transport.
Great. I will ask you one more question and then we go to Vincent from Nijmegen. Wim Korver, he's asking, what is actual rural mobility? I think the definition, there are large differences in types of rural areas, and a rural area in Belgium is not the same as a rural area in the center of Spain. What do you think, Andrea?
Yeah, that's an actually good point, and you're right. I mean, not rural areas are the same, and probably also my presentation, I was not clear with that. We don't want the European level to develop the same policy, but we want that the European level push each country to develop its national policy. And for example, in Flanders, there is this concept of mobility as a right, and the Flemish Transport Ministry is working on this about basic accessibility to provide accessibility to rural areas. And what we would like, or we want the Commission to really force each member state to say, look, rural mobility is a problem, and you have to identify what are the best solutions for your country and for your region, for your municipality, for that. There is no silver bullet. That's right, because rural areas are different.
Very clear, and mobility is basic freedom. I think you explained it very well. Thank you so much, Andrea. I would like to, thank you very much. I would like to invite Vincent up to the stage. Vincent, could you come up? And then I want to talk about Anima Animation, a virtual experimental demonstration to all-inclusive access of public transport. Vincent, welcome. I will leave and the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome, Pascal. Due to problems, Pascal will host my presentation. I want to welcome you all also on behalf of the city of Nijmegen. This the town where I work, and is one of the towns which hosts this beautiful congress. I want to tell, Pascal, you can start up a presentation if it works. This is all very experimental what we are doing here. I will tell something about accessibility of public space and public transport for elderly, and more specific, I want to tell you about the accessibility of our main station, in which very often I'm asked to think with all the people working in that project. What I wanted to do is to show you how modern animation techniques can show a lot of interesting insights into accessibility for elderly, but I'm afraid the film won't work due to technical problems. So first I want to look if Pascal can work out the presentation at this moment. Anyway, that gives me the time to tell something about myself. I've been working the last 5 years in the city of Nijmegen in an effort to make the city more accessible for disabled people, and mainly also for elderly. And the central policy in which way we do that is actually quite simple. That is that we set to ourselves in our town that when we restructure or build new roads, that at that moment, if we do it the right way, in a question of maybe 15 or 20 years, our city will be accessible. So what we actually did was we made a manual, we made a guide with rules, with things which are obligated to, and standards which are obligated to follow while building the city. And we made this guide together with elderly people and disabled people. And to my happiness, this guide is adopted and subscribed by all the building peoples in our town. So the last 5 years.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a little bit of a problem with your presentation. So to keep your story together, I would recommend maybe we should go to Ricardo and Geert-Jan first, and then I'll ask you to come to the stage later again.
Okay, yeah.
I'm so sorry, but we will work it out, okay?
Okay, we'll Vries.
Okay.
I'll leave now.
Ricardo and Geert-Jan, could you come up to the stage, please?
Yes.
Thank you so much. I will leave again and have a very good presentation. Good luck.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Thank you, Maud. My name is Geert-Jan Verzijden. I'm the manager of ZOOF, and ZOOF is the demand responsive transport system in the Achterhoek in the Netherlands. And in this session, Ricardo Poppeliers will tell you all about the difference ZOOF wants to make towards the mobility poverty in the Achterhoek. I give the word to Ricardo.
Okay, good morning to you all. If I look a bit up, it's because I have a double screen, so sorry for that. My name is Ricardo Poppeliers. I'm working at Ecorys, and I was quite involved in ZOOF together with Geert-Jan. We want to guide you, and I think it's good that we are after SMARTA, who gives a European view, to give this regional, local view about ZOOF. Just to start, ZOOF is the regional demand responsive transport system in the Achterhoek in the Netherlands, and it deals with the flexible transport services. If you look to the screen, you see different pictures that's about transport for all. So it's not only the elderly, it's not only persons with reduced mobility, it's not only the youth. But it's also used to transfer to the regular public transport, to the supply driven public transport. In our presentation, we will focus on this public transport, or this transport services publicly tendered. So we will not highlight the private transport systems. And I fully agree with Robert Bruzzi that it's about low demand. Why we sketch the rural area as you see it here, because Achterhoek is really a rural area in the Netherlands, but it all deals with the low demand transport. So if you look to the Achterhoek, it's about 7 municipalities in the Netherlands. It's situated here, is the border with Germany. So here you also see that it's very close to Germany. So the functional area of the Achterhoek and the inhabitants of the Achterhoek, they're also traveling to Germany. If you look to the demographic figures, this is a scale of 5,000, and this is a scale of 5 years, so it goes to 2040. You see a real decline in inhabitants. The demographic part, the elderly, they raise, the younger people leave. And if you look to these figures, it's quite small. So you see that the capital city of the Achterhoek, Doetinchem, is less than 60,000 people, with a total of 260,000 people. And if you see the city of Doetinchem rising with people, it's also related to, for example, a refugee center that's coming. So it's about the rural area, it's about several smaller municipalities, the 7 municipalities, it's cross-border, and it's an aging and declining population. If you're talking about challenges, we're talking about challenges to avoid mobility poverty. So especially the people that doesn't have a car or cannot drive a car. It's focusing on all citizens, like I said, including those with reduced mobility. And to make the difference, we consider it very important to have different communication types and channels, so website, but also phone contact and personal contact. That's very important to see and to hear what the view of citizens is, of your real travelers. Citizen participation, if you look to this figure, this is the flag of the Achterhoek, by the way. There's a panel panel of citizens to which was asked, what do you really find or consider important for the Achterhoek? So I will come back on the mobility results in the next slide. And what is important is also a continuous monitoring of the customer satisfaction and the quantitative trip data, so the use of the system, what people really think about it. And also indicators, so what do you want actually to reach with the system? And this figure says that not only the citizens, but also the transporters, so the mobility provider says, okay, we got the data about customer satisfaction, with which we can do really something. It's not just a measurement of customer satisfaction, to measure, but really to reach an objective. If you look to the next challenges, organizing transport for all in a rural area, so in a low demand area, that there was a question, I think, to avoid a chicken and egg. If you look to the citizens' participation, so the panel, and there was asked what should happen or what should happen more to keep or to make locations more accessible or accessible. This is a top 3, and number 1 is to make a balance between demand and supply, so demand responsive transport. And that's not a chicken and an egg. That's a system that is there for everybody. That's available for everybody in case they want to travel. If you look to the challenges on a more operational level, it's about which quality and which costs. So it's not only the environmental sustainability, but also the financial sustainability. And then you come also in depth in the business models. So you have a business model of regular public transport, and you have another business model for the more demand responsive transport, so the taxi transport. If you look in the Achterhoek, it's a system, but Geert-Jan and his team is also steering on sustainability. So you don't want to have students in a taxi instead of on a bike. You're also thinking about CarPlay sharing if this is the case. The challenges in organizing such a system, it's a cooperation, so it's also a government issue. It's a cooperation between public transport authority, in this case the province of Gelderland in the Achterhoek, and municipalities who are responsible for transport for people with reduced mobility. But it's not only the cooperation between the public transport authority and the municipalities, it's also cooperation between municipalities and within municipalities. And to give you a clue, that there are 4 different laws in the Netherlands which group or identify groups of people that needs specified transport. But what you see is that, especially in the smaller local authorities, people have a social function, so function on the social domain, and the transport is just a very small part of it, without having really the knowledge to organize. If you look to ZOEF, to give you a glimpse, ZOEF was a change in the governance model. So it fits within the mobility vision of the province of Gelderland, who also involved the municipalities, but also citizens in this mobility vision. And there was a political decision of the province, but also of the municipalities, to come from a more province-led, demand-responsive, small-scale system to a system led by the regional cooperation of the 7 municipalities. So not 7 different local municipalities, but really centralized regional cooperation. On the operational level, there was a change that planning and transport were separated instead of integrated within one mobility provider. And I saw the good practice in the SMARTA project, which was highlighting Groningen-Drenthe. That's another example in the Netherlands, indeed, in which planning and transport are still with the transport provider. And I'm not going to value any of these systems, but I want to take you through the ZOEF and the results of the ZOEF model so far. So the aim of this change in governance model was also a direct steering possibility by municipalities. For example, on qualitative inclusion effects and quantitative costs, because the municipalities are much more closer to the citizens in low demand areas, where the regular public transport to the Achterhoek with train and more high demand buses is organized by the province. So the evaluation in the end of 2018 showed that the cost and the quality was raised, and that was raised before the exploitation of the transport, before SOOF was implemented. So with the model of SOOF, the cost and quality was raised. And we identified several factors explaining this development. So the question, why did the cost and the quality raised? However, due to the lack of baseline data, so also due to the lack of a real ex-ante assessment before SOOF, this full ex-post assessment was not possible. And I think that's also really a lesson. If you decide to change a model, to really have sharp what you want to reach, and to have this baseline data in place. So if you look to the identified factors categorized, and I will not highlight them all because you can also see them on the slide. I think the main message here is if you change a model, you change also mechanisms, and that leads to several consequences, which you have to realize at forehand. And what I mean with this is that it's not only a change in the model itself, but it's also choices in the tendering. So the choices in the tendering did not lead to the most efficient tenderer, which explains a part of the costs which raised. And I think also an important one to mention is that the costs related in transport for persons with reduced mobility before SOOF were not specified. They were part of the social domain regular work. And as I explained earlier, this was at the local authorities, and with 4 different laws. We also saw that sometimes there were 4 different departments within one local authority dealing with transport, and that in a very reactive way. So what we saw in 2018 as a first step, it was the experience with the new model, the tendering transport system and center and operational consequences, but also as a quality factor that SOOF here, so the team of Geert-Jan was in place as an organization. They had the capacity in place, and there was no disparate knowledge anymore over several small municipalities. And I think that's specific for a rural area. Really a quality factor that has been taken here. There was also insight in factors and indicators influencing the coast development. During this POLIS day, we heard about the SUMI indicators, especially for this flexible transport services and inclusion. Indicators are also very important, and this is what the SOOF model experienced. So also insight in monitoring indicators, making it possible to develop really a framework for assessment, so that you also have on the political level something to steer on, and insight in data collection and definition. It was nice to hear that the SMARTA project was a project with a start and an ending, and of course Andrea also explained about the recommendations also to the European Commission. SOOF is something that has been realized with pure Dutch money, so to say, so no European money. And it doesn't have a beginning and an end. It's a process. And I think that's very important to stress. So what has happened is that the province and also the municipalities participated in a Dutch study about the integrated assessment on societal benefits of transport for persons with reduced mobility. So I don't want to say that it's only about costs. It's also about the added value of these types of systems for the citizens in such an area. So indicators and data are developed. What, in my opinion, is lacking is really a smart policy ambition. And I think that also relates to the story of Andrea about SMARTA. If you don't have a policy ambition or a norm on inclusion, it's very hard in a cooperation to really make the roles of the provinces and the municipalities very smart. And this real smart policy ambition will help to steer or to guide the more tactical and operational level. So if you look to the ambition and to the guidance, there's an impact of one demand responsive system open for all, steered by one regional authority. But there's also an impact of execution of different demand responsive systems, partly in a public transport concession and partly in contract under a regional authority. And this is the cooperation and the cooperation challenges that is currently also discussed between ZOEF and the province. So to conclude my presentation, because I have only limited time, the first steps have been taken, the results are there, and the cooperation goes further. And I think that's a very important lesson and also an important knowledge to share.
Yes, thank you so much, Ricardo and Geert-Jan. I wanna hear your next step, Ricardo. What is the next step for the project?
Actually, it's not the project, so it's a process that actually Geert-Jan is very much involved in. So maybe Geert-Jan, I can give you the floor to answer this.
Yes, I can. We are now talking with the province and the municipalities to further develop the system to make things more inclusive for everyone, make it more for all people with the same possibilities. I see also the question about the fee in the chat. Yes, the users pay a fee, but the fee is now depending if there is transport available, and people with reduced mobility pay a lower fee than other people. And when you see this as an inclusive system, why is that difference there? So we also are investigating possibilities to make the system for all inhabitants, with or without reduced mobility, the same.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. Sounds really, really good. Thank you for your presentation. And Pascal put up a general question to all of you. So maybe everyone who's looking right now wants to answer the question there. In the meantime, I want to invite the next speaker on the stage, which is Maria Rodrigues. Maria, could you come to the stage? And Ricardo and Geert-Jan, could you please leave?
Sorry.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Hi, Maria.
Hello.
Well, you could announce yourself, please, and I would love to see your presentation. Thank you so much. Looking forward.
Thank you, Maud. So good morning, everybody. My name is Maria Rodrigues, and I work in transport and mobility for a Dutch consultancy and research institute, Panteia, as you can see from the logo in presentation. And I will tell you a little bit about assessing digital travel information services for persons with disability and reduced mobility. So this is part of a study that was done for the European Commission, where we wanted to explore and assess the current information services that currently exist to assist travelers that experience any impairment or reduced mobility. So the problem behind this, and that's why they launched the study, it's to the barriers that people with disabilities and reduced mobility still experience when they are accessing digital travel information services, which is mainly the lack of specialized information to support them managing mobility challenges, and the lack of services that provide and present information in a way that it's suitable to cognitive and sensory impairments. So this project was a bit broader, and I will present you the results that we had from the travel expectation service that targets this group of people, and we had a sample of 130, and they were mainly from Portugal, UK, and the Netherlands, because it's related to the pilots that we did in the project. And on the other hand, we did this large assessment of the current digital transport information systems. We assessed 125. And I'll present you a little bit on that. So talking a bit on the travel expectation survey that we did, I will just show you some of the outcomes. So we had questions to identify in which parts and in which sense do people with reduced mobility have issues and difficulties. And we could observe, and you can also see from the graphic, that the biggest one is related with mobility. And then we have also lifting objects and the balance. Those are mainly the biggest difficulties that they face when they are traveling. When we ask about the most important way the information and the services are presented, we got the answers mainly written information compatible with screen readers. And this is especially important for people with sight problems. And when we ask about the sources that are used to make use of the access information about your travel, we got mainly the reply via internet, via a computer, or internet via mobile phone. And then we also ask them to rate the importance of the digital transport information system function, so that we could also understand which functions are really needed and by this group that maybe they are not being provided by the current systems. And we could see that the ones that they consider very important is information on real-time transport schedules and disruptions, because if it's for a person without disabilities or without reduced mobility, disruptions is already a problem. A person who might need assistance, it can be a bigger problem. And they also point out information on accessibility of travel and route options, and also information on accessibility of destination and transport stations. So some key findings from this survey that we did. As I mentioned, mobility, lifting objects, and the balance were the most mentioned difficulties that they face. There is general lower satisfaction level about the information regarding public transport. There are difficulties related with the physical access to transport, which suggests that some people are not using digital systems because there is still this infrastructure limitation and barrier that the vehicle or the station, they are not suitable for people with some problems. And the accuracy of the information provided is also a very important characteristic of digital systems, together, of course, with the credibility and the reliability. And this is very much related with the fact that if the information is not updated, and if there is an elevator that they are expecting to use, and if there is a disruption, that can be a really serious problem on real time. And now quickly mentioning, we did this assessment of the digital information tools. So we had a sample with 125. There was some others that we assessed, but they were very poor in terms of information, so we ended up not considering. It covers all EU member states and also Iceland, Norway, and Switzerland. And if you look for the geographical coverage of the digital systems, they were mainly local and regional. That's not because we disregard the others, it's because they simply don't exist or exist in a less quantity. So one of the big problems that we also talk about digital information systems for people with disability or reduced mobility is the fact that most of them are local or regional. So if they want to go from the Netherlands to Portugal, for example, they will have to consult the local information systems from all the countries, because currently there is not such a platform where you can say, I want to go from this country to the other country and tell me what are the problems and the barriers that I might face. We also tried to assess the information regarding the pre-trip information, during the mid-trip information, and also the post-trip information. And here it's the channels that they use for the different trip segments. So we can see that most of the information available on these systems are pre-trip information. And again, some general findings, some general results. So we could see that when there is information specific for this group of people, these are mainly covering motor impairments. And then there are also some digital systems covering visual impairments. As an overall assessment, we can see that 46% consider that some elements are provided, while 38% consider that generally the digital systems that exist are quite weak in terms of specific information they provide. If we look here to this graphic, on the additional information that is provided, we can see that information on schedule and fares are usually the additional information provided. And on the left side is the assessment that was done in terms of location of the transport nodes, layout and facilities, design and accessibility of the vehicles, accessibility of ticking and booking facilities. So for all of these options, as you can see, the green here is on the no information. So there is a lack of information, especially about design and accessibility of the vehicles or accessibility of the ticketing and booking facilities. On the other hand, we see that there is descriptive information and maps for example, the location of the transport nodes. So for this evaluation of the systems, we defined this evaluation criteria that you see here. So we evaluated if there was information specifically addressing this group of people with disabilities and reduced mobility, if the information available on the digital systems also covered several transport modes or was specific for one transport mode, the type of information that was provided, if it was information pre-trip, during the trip, or post-trip, and also if the information was being updated on real time. And then we also checked the functionalities that were offered. So if there was information about the location, if there was a layout of the stations, the vehicle ticketing, how was it, the booking, etc. And then we also included an assessment of the services that were possible to do by using these digital systems, like buying the ticket or consulting the schedule. We also check if they were providing real-time information or if it was just static information, and also if there was information about the satisfaction with the system, with the tools. And the images that you see on the right side, they are from a crowdsource platform that was created at that time in Lisbon, where they are doing data collection regarding the stations, public transport stations, and they are using the real people with the disabilities and reduced mobility and have them assessing the stations regarding their needs. And this is somehow a novelty that they are doing. So some key findings from the assessment that we did. Unfortunately, the situation was a little bit worse than what we expected. So there is insufficient and inadequate service catered to persons with disability or reduced mobility. And while there is a great deal of travel information systems being provided currently, the challenges of a digital system that provide inclusive service to individual that strongly differ on the needs, it's still a difficulty. The availability and especially the quality of the data on accessibility related aspects of the travel are also a constraint faced by the providers. So there is this concern that the data that exists, either it's not being collected because there is nor a specific entity assigned to collect this type of information, so it's generally not provided. So until there is also data available, the potential that we might have with these digital information systems, it's still a bit jeopardized because it might not happen until you have a proper information to show. And we face that when we try to set a pilot demo to show the information that exists. So improving the procedures to generate and maintaining this data, which can be via crowdsource, as we saw the example from Lisbon, or any other official mechanism by the governments, transport providers, infrastructure managers from the interchange, so that depends, or a mixed approach, which we would say that should be a priority for the future. And some concrete recommendations regarding the existing digital transport tools. We would say presenting the route and the line information is quite relevant, avoiding information overload, and also for those with cognitive impairments, which is especially a problem for them. Making use of accessibility criteria in the journey planning so that you can choose according to your needs and you can judge if that station is accessible for you or not. Presenting station accessibility information. So some users want to have a detailed information on all the stages of accessibility rather than a generic assessment of accessibility. This is because in some systems, you just have information, is the station available, accessible? Yes or no. But that really depends from the level of impairment that the person might have. He might be able to go some steps or he might not be able. So the groups that we consulted, they would prefer to have the information and then they would be the ones judging if it's accessible or not. One-stop page for accessibility information. So reaching a web page where all the links to accessibility information and services would also be recommended. Would make it easier to consult and to travel multimodal, if that's possible. Motivating innovation in the field. So compliance to the regulation that exists versus innovation. The quality and availability of the data. There is a huge need to improve and to innovate there. And presenting to those with the visual impairments. Innovative technologies may also be employed for the mid-trip use, such as dedicated standalone tools or mobile apps. And before the thank you for your attention, we produced also a booklet with the 15 good practices, and I'm seeing most, so I might be late.
No, go on, please.
Okay, it's just to finalize that we will have this available online, which is a booklet with the 15 good practices that we have identified. You can see here the indication, and in this booklet you have this type of information. So we identify the digital transport tool that we are assessing, and we use the criteria that I've mentioned, and then you can see also this type of information for all of the 15s, with some of the boxes highlighting what's the added value that we see in this type of digital transport tool. And now, thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Yeah, Maria, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. It was really very clear, and yeah, I loved listening to it. I saw 2 questions in the chat box. I'm always thinking about users when I hear a story. So I was thinking about a friend with a visual disability, and he's traveling everywhere, and of course he has to overcome a lot of challenges. And Robert is asking you about the definition of disability. So I'm going to look up his question. He says, how do you define disabilities and reduced mobility? Because he says often it is a bit like it has a bit of a negative connotation. Could we sort of reframe the word disability?
Yeah, and thank you, Robert, for the question. I understand the point, and that's why in the study initially we were calling it PRM because it was the official designation, so people with reduced mobility, and then we added with disabilities. So a disability can be an impairment that a person might be facing, which can be temporary or permanent. So it can be somebody with a broken leg, or even in terms of the reduced mobility, you have, of course, older people that might have some challenges using steps or moving quickly, or you might have also a mother with a stroller. So it's a broad definition. So it doesn't mean to have a negative connotation. It's just there are impairments which can be visual, which can be related with hearing, which can be a motor impairment, and that's what we aim to address so that we can have this accessibility for all as a reality.
Yeah, exactly, true. And Sergio also has a question. He says, hello, Maria. Thank you for your clear and insightful presentation. I agree on that. In your research, have you found that people with reduced mobility would prefer to access the information in channels specific to their needs, or would they prefer enhancements to existing channels instead? For example, a dedicated reduced mobility app instead of a mainstream app that better caters their needs.
Yeah. Actually, if we think about in an inclusive system, and that's what they also want, they would prefer not to have a dedicated app. We should have one general app where you would have some functionalities that the person could consult if they have any impairment, which can be temporary or permanent, or any issue regarding the reduced mobility. So it should be one general app. And what they pointed more is exactly this, that they can travel locally. That's somehow a bit easier because they only have to consult one app. But if they want to go to another country, it's extremely difficult for them because you don't really have this Google Maps in a way with all the information that they would need, which is in the mid-trip stage. So that was something that was very much pointed out. And they were also saying that although it can be possible to do the travel, they always have to book way in advance all the services. So I remember in one of these meetings that we had with some associations that they were saying, if I want to have a drink tomorrow in Brussels early morning with a friend, or tonight if I want to go for a drink with a friend, I can't go because I will have to book in some digital tools. I have to ask for support, and that has to be done 48 hours before. And that's a big challenge that to overcome.
Totally. I have one more question because 3 people already in the chat box want to hear a bit more from you because they don't think this is enough. They want to hear, maybe if you can send them some more information. I see your email here on the last slide, but maybe you could, explain a bit more about what you have and what you could share.
Yes, I'm also looking to the questions. So we finished the study, so it's already with Digimove, and they are actually about to publish it, so everything will be public. So what I can do is I can put the links for the study and for the good practices, because I think that's the most relevant one. I can include those links in the presentation so that when POLIS will share it, you can have the links directly, because now it's still not available. And I don't know if there is any question.
Yeah. No, I have one more, but then we have to go on to the next speaker, to Vincent. Jorge says, hi, Maria, are you considering that a lot of impaired people may not even have access to digitalized information app? Very good question.
Exactly. That's why it should always be somehow complemented by, for example, a phone number or a way that the person can ask for assistance if they are not able to tackle with the mobile phone, which some people are not. So they already use the internet because of that. But yes, definitely there should be some more human supports at the same time that can support those situations, which fortunately there are less than the others.
Thank you very, very much, Maria. And please put the links in your presentation so everybody can find. And I want to invite the next speaker, who is Vincent, again, from the Gemeente Nijmegen. Vincent, I think we overcame some technicalities. And good luck for your presentation. You will work it out.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, compliments for Maria. Very interesting presentation. I hope my presentation will work this time, and otherwise I will improvise and try to make my story without those beautiful pictures. Maria told us about impairments and disabled people. In my presentation, I want to be a little less theoretical and a little more practical, and try to give the face of disabled people in the future, and to see what we have to do to make disabled people go into an inclusive society. I'm Vincent Meijers. I work as a policymaker in the Gemeente Nijmegen, the city of Nijmegen, for the public space and especially for the disabled people to make the city more accessible. I've been doing that for the last 5 years, and the way we do that, as I mentioned before, was making a manual which is obligatory for every person who builds in the city, who makes new roads and restructures roads, and it gives the rules and the norms for making an accessible city. And our policy making is that if we do that for the next 15 or 20 years, the city will be accessible of its own. In my own learning in this project, I've and thank you. This slide will do. I have discovered that when you make a city accessible for all, then you're doing the right thing. So it's not a difference if you look at a 3-year-old or a 85-year-old. They both have to go the same routes through the city, and it makes no difference if you have a wheelchair or a pram with a baby in it, or a playing child, or a blind person. The city has to be accessible for all, and that's what you see in Holland, the inclusive way of thinking, that you go from the medical model to the social model. Everybody has to go through the city. Well, if we go to the next, what I want to see, what I want to show on this slide is our main station. Our main station in our town was built in the previous century. It was bombed in the Second World War, and now we have a little kind of modern station which is very crowded, and in which different mobility forms of mobility, like pedestrians and bicycles and buses and cars, are very often conflicting, and many people in the city don't feel it a safe surrounding. So we are very happy that we can start a project to rebuild our station and the surroundings to a modern way. And what the last picture in the previous slide was an artist impression of what it will be. And we hope that the conflict of the different types of mobility will be solved in that new design. When we go to the development of city centers at this moment, I think you will recognize a lot of things in your own town or in the towns you know. I think these things that are on these slides are the main tendencies in all city centers in the Western world. We see a function change from a place to buy to a place to be. So shops make place for pubs and hotels and restaurants. And we see more density. So shopping is less because of the internet. But in our town, and maybe in your town also, you see lots more housing, living, working places, and leisure. So the city centers are getting very dense. What we also see is a prevalence of pedestrians. In our town, you see that the cars and all other kinds of, even the buses, are going to the wider area of the city and the city center. We find a priority for walking and cycling. And what you also see is that the public transport is getting very, very more important than it was before. And the main thing I want to address in this point is that we also see in society, in Western society, the problem of aging. There are many more elder people than there were before, and the tendency will be that there will be many, many more elderly people. And I want to give you these people a face. So if we go to the next slide, and we look at aging, so what impairments aging gives, and I would like to invite you to try to look at some elderly person you know, maybe a parent or a grandparent or an acquaintance, which is, let's say, 80 or 90 years old. Then you always see physical disabilities. You see people with aids, like wheelchairs or walkers. And what you see is that people in old age have problems with the senses, with the eyesight or the hearing. They get almost blind, or they get a little more deaf. And what was a very interesting picture is what I put on this slide. This is what I borrowed from a physiologist in the how do you call it? The blind society, the blind platform of the Netherlands, one of the blind platforms. And this picture gives the amount of light that your eye, your retina and your eyes needs to see the same. And on the x-axis you see the age. So in horizontal you see the age from 10 till 60, and in the vertical you see the amount of light. So my daughters, who are around 20s, they see with the same amount of light, they see 10 times as much as I see, because I'm nearly 60. So this is a very important thing to notice, that elderly people need very much more light and contrast in public space to see the same things than young people. And like you maybe know, the public space is usually designed for an athletic guy of 20 years old. What we further on see is speed and balance. This elderly people get slower and they lose their balance. And which is very important, and Maria addresses that also, is that cognitive and orientation-wise, elderly people get lack of orientation in the public space. If you go to the next slide, I will give a little prognosis of what we can see in our cities and our towns in about 2040, and that's not very far away. That's only in about 20 years. The Netherlands will at that moment, according to our statistical department in our country, will have 18 million inhabitants, and 4.7 million will be elderly than 65 years. And even 1.5 million will be 80 plus. So more than a quarter, 26%, will be old, and 1 in 12 will be very old. So if we look at designing public space and public transport at this moment for the future, we must consider elderly people. And in this picture, I have pictured myself in about 20 years. So I will be one of those 80 plus people, but I won't be alone, happily. If you go to the next slide, we'll see our station. This is part of the bus station, which is at the right side of our main station. And what you have to do when you get from the bus is to have a transfer from this bus station, and you have to walk to in the neighborhood of the tower you see in the far end. And what we have done on earlier congress, together with Sweco, and Sweco is one of the great technical companies in Holland, engineering firms, we have said, well, we have new techniques to make a little film, a little animated film, to show how the surroundings are. And we have in this techniques recently, we can put living people like animas, so we can animate people in these environments. And we usually do that with all glossy-like young people to show how good our architecture is. What now if we put in there an elderly people and we try to imagine what is it to walk through a new surrounding when we design it, when you're old. And we have made a film, a little film for this congress, for looking at an elderly person to move from the bus, in this case, to the main entrance of the station. And now I hope very much that in my presentation, in the next slide, this film will work, because when you do this, you can see that while doing this animation, you can, at that moment, try out some design features. So I hope it starts. And if it won't, I will, I have to tell it to you. So we have animated, we made two animations then, but I have to choose for one animation in this case of an elderly woman of 85 years old with a wheeler. Yeah, there she is, and she is walking from the bus. You see, she's nearly hit by a bus in this case. She's walking to the station, and I have to tell, and she will walk around further on. I hope technically there she goes. She goes very slowly. That was the intention also of the film, because when the animator was making this film, he first let her walk normal speed, and I said to him, well, listen, all the elderly people walk almost half the speed of a normal young person. So it takes her a lot of time to make the transfer across these buses to the main entrance. And there in the far end, you see the tower. Somewhere there, I don't know if Granny knows where it is. She has to find the main entrance of our station. So if you don't do this in the internet but on your laptop, she just walks on, and here she has to go a little bit steep on, so she will go a little bit slower. And at this moment, Granny will think, where the fuck do I have to go? Because it's not very clear that the main entrance is in the neighborhood of that tower. So in this way of animating, you can have a real experience of how it is to be elderly person, and to find your way. And you can also, at that moment, go to what you can make of it while designing a better surrounding. So the next part of the film, the artist made, well, let's do a crossover. When I earlier presented this, the busing people were very angry at me, because we say, well, we can't have this crossover because the schedule of the buses will be totally ruined by all this waiting for all those elderly people. I say, well, it's what you choose. And now you can see that when you do a little other kind of designing, you can make the orientation easier. You can make a close line. You can make a little less steep hill to go on, and you can make a nice surrounding, maybe with trees or with lines.
Vincent.
So yeah.
I came into the chat box because we have little time, and I'm sorry to say, but we have to round off your presentation.
Okay, you can close the picture, because I think the message is clear. Yeah. So I have some concluding remarks, and I can say, well, try this when you make a new surrounding. So in designing, ask your designer to put an elderly or somebody in a wheelchair in the surrounding, so you get a different experience. I have some concluding remarks. What I already said, design for all, that will be the new way and starting point for design. So design for a 85-year-old, or design for elders with a 3-year-old kid. If it suits them, it suits everyone. So make it easy, make white space, make it even, make a flat surface, make enough light, enough contrast, and think of resting places in the way and in your walking routes. And in that way, I want to say to Maria also, make wayfinding where you go intuitive, because when you know where to go, and everybody knows to go, and the route is intuitive, you can find it easy. Okay, we'll find questions and remarks later on in the chat box. Thank you very much.
Thank you much, Vincent. It was a great presentation and good to have you. I already see Colm coming in. Colm, okay. Take it from
Hi.
here.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
And I think I'll just have to have my presentation shared. I don't see it at the moment, but I can. Are you getting my presentation?
No, we can't see your presentation, and we don't see you, Colm.
All right.
Alexia, could you step in?
Don't seem to be, my screen isn't, it's not letting me share my screen. So if you can put up with audio.
Yeah, now it works, Colm. It's great. We see your presentation. Go on, please.
Okay, so I'm just going to, next slide, please. And the next one. I'm just seeing the first slide there. Sorry about this now. Okay, the next one. So I'll just give you a whistle-stop tour through a couple of years of work, just to some context and talk about the original signage, our sign redesign, consultation, communications, and our implementation. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, so just to tell you a little bit about Dublin, city of over 500,000 people, not a huge city in European terms, but growing all the time. I'd love to be able to invite you all to Dublin for next 17th of March, Patrick's Day, but I don't think that's going to happen. Next slide, please. A little bit about Dublin City Council itself. Our head office is on the banks of the River Liffey. It flows through Dublin. About 6,000 employees. We cover the core city centre area of Dublin and go out to about 6 or 7 kilometres from that. And our budgets there are not going to be so healthy next year. Next slide, please. So our inner and outer orbital routes were assigned in the early 90s, the early noughties, around 2001, 2002. And the key objective of the orbital routes was to try to take the traffic and congestion out of the city centre. So by getting traffic that was travelling across the city, get them to scoot around the orbital routes instead. The idea is to keep them out of the city centre. So you can see the inner orbital route there in the light colour, the outer orbital route in the darker purple colour. So next slide, please. And that's just some of the the inner orbital route signage. You can see that it's a little bit coded. You really need the map from the previous slide to interpret the different junctions and where everything is. A little bit busy. And next slide, please. And the outer orbital route signage, again, a little bit busy. If you're driving around the city at any kind of speed, it's difficult to sort of pick up on all the information as you drive past. And by 2015, 2016, the signage was, a lot of it was damaged, some of it was missing, but it also didn't reflect the huge improvements that had happened in the 15 years or so in the provision of an integrated transportation system in Dublin. So next slide, please. And some of the improvements were top left-hand corner there, our new port tunnel in the north side of Dublin, our Lewis tram system. Lewis is the Irish word for fast speed. Our several bridges over the River Liffey, including the beautiful Santiago de Calatrava designed Samuel Beckett Bridge. We've increased our bus provision and vastly increased improved our cycling infrastructure. So next slide, please. And then a lot of what we're doing in Dublin around transportation over the last few years is guided by the Dublin City Centre Transportation Study of 2016. So this study identified a need to refresh and renew the orbital route signage. So next slide, please. So between Dublin City Council, ourselves, and the National Transport Authority, we appointed Arup consultants to carry out a redesign of the orbital routes and the signage. Next slide, please. And we wanted the new signage to adhere to these principles, just to make it clearer, more concise, consistent, comprehensive, and also wanted it flexible and sustainable. So next slide, please. And we're also bound by the traffic signs manual, which is the statutory design manual for all traffic signs in Ireland. And we had to adhere to the requirement for Irish and English signage. Everybody in Ireland speaks English, but we also learn Irish in school. It's a very different language to English, and